Why do you stop yourself right when you're about to succeed? Why does a part of you pull back at the very edge of progress, as if triumph itself were a threat? And if success is what you've been chasing all along, then why does it sometimes feel safer to fail? Welcome to Neuro Academy. Tonight we'll explore the hidden brain science of self-sabotage, the ancient watchtower in your mind that sounds alarms even in moments of victory, the stress hormones that rise right before achievement, and the subconscious scripts that whisper not for you when opportunity is close. But here's the unsettling question. If your own brain resists the very thing you desire most, then who is really holding you back? You or the circuitry inside you? Because I want this to be a complete and transformative journey, I've prepared a free practical guide with a clear summary of tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to whenever you need it. Stay with me as we step into the quiet science of why the mind can fear success even more than failure. You imagine yourself standing at the edge of a stage. A sea of faces lies before you, silent, expectant, each one throwing a glimmer of light back at you. The spotlight is warm against your skin, but your body does not lift with it. Your palms grow damp, your throat tightens, your legs stiffen because some part of you reads forward motion as risk. This is the moment you dreamed of, therefore the thought lands sharp and quiet. What if I fail now? It feels illogical, almost cruel. Because you worked for this, why would the mind resist the outcome it chased? The answer doesn't live in weakness or laziness, but in ancient machinery designed first for survival. Therefore anything unpredictable, even success, is flagged as threat. Here the paradox begins. You were built to seek food, safety, love, recognition, but you were also built to retreat when the unknown grows too bright or too loud. Success is unknown, therefore primitive circuits often treat it as danger in gold wrapping. Think of the mind as a traveler carrying two maps. One map is bold, pointing toward growth and transformation, but the other is worn, familiar, and easy to follow even when it loops you in circles. At the edge of opportunity, both maps unfold at once. Therefore, the older map often wins, because safety feels truer than promise. Physiology confirms it. When you anticipate success, the same systems that prepare you for threat switch on, heart racing, muscles tensing, cortisol rising, because the body would rather overprotect than underprepare. To the nervous system, an open door can look like a hidden predator. Therefore, hesitation is not failure of willpower, but a biological echo. Picture a small village thousands of years ago. Standing out could invite envy. Risk could mean exile. Visibility could bring danger, because belonging kept you alive. That memory sits in your wiring. Therefore, the brain that hesitates at the brink of victory today is the same one that once whispered caution to the hunter who brought back too much, or the child who sang too loudly by the fire. Modern life has fewer lions, but the reaction remains. A promotion, a performance, a new relationship all feel like stepping into a clearing where everyone can see you, because exposure amplifies imagined judgment. You sense invisible eyes, some admiring, some measuring, some waiting for you to stumble. Therefore part of you pulls back. Here lies the deeper knot. The circuits of reward and fear intertwine. Dopamine paints the prize in vivid color, but the amygdala, the watchtower, interrogates the same image. What if it vanishes? What if it costs too much? What if you lose it? Therefore the goal becomes both flame and burn. Fire clarifies the metaphor. Fire warms, protects, illuminates, but it also consumes. Your ancestors knew both truths. Therefore your brain approaches light while bracing for heat. Near success you are not only reaching for brightness, but nearing intensity, because heat can harm. A part of you recoils, even as another part reaches out. This raises a quieter fear. Do you resist success because you fear failing, or because you fear changing? To succeed is not merely to gain, but to transform. Therefore the self you know must loosen. Perhaps the deepest dread is not losing the prize, but losing the version of you that felt safe. Pause there. Imagine stepping fully into a dream realized. Would your relationships shift, your routines alter, your identity tilt? Self-sabotage can be your brain's way of asking, are you ready to lose who you were to become who you might be? Because identity anchors behavior, any tug on identity pulls the anchor, therefore the boat resists the tide. This is why self-sabotage feels irrational and intimate. You aren't fighting an external enemy, but negotiating with an inner guardian whose purpose is protection, even when its methods now harm more than help. Procrastination, perfectionism, sudden retreat from intimacy are not moral failures, they are signals that say unfamiliar, risky, stay. Yet possibility hides inside the tension. If you can see the shadow, you can also see the light behind it, because the shadow is cast by systems that once kept you alive. Therefore, the first step is not to fight the brain, but to understand it. Success triggers alarms because the watchtower cannot yet tell predator from progress. So when your body hesitates at the brink of achievement, imagine not an enemy pulling you back, but a sentinel raising its hand. This sentinel has guarded you for millennia. It doesn't yet know the difference between threat and threshold. Therefore, awareness becomes the beginning of training. And a final door opens if success rings the same bell as danger, because the watchtower reads both as risk. How does the brain decide when to let you pass and when to hold you back? That decision sits in a small, tireless structure deep within the ancient watchtower that never sleeps. Close your eyes and picture a fortress. Its walls are high, its torches always burning, its guards never resting. At the center of that fortress stands a single watchtower, narrow and tall, overlooking every path that leads to your gates. This is no ordinary fortress, this is your mind, and the watchtower is the amygdala, an almond-shaped guardian hidden deep behind your temples, ancient in design, unrelenting in duty. You may think of success as a golden treasure waiting on the horizon, but to the watchtower, every change is first a possible threat. Its role is not to weigh dreams or to measure ambition. Its role is survival. When it detects something unfamiliar, whether it is a stranger's gaze, a sudden sound, or even the opportunity you've long desired, it reacts with speed, not with nuance. It sends a signal, a wave of electricity and chemistry through your body. Prepare to fight, to flee, or to freeze. That moment you feel your chest tighten before speaking in public, or the restless urge to avoid sending the finished project, is not weakness, it is the watchtower, doing its work, scanning the horizon, ringing the alarm. Success, after all, demands exposure. Exposure means vulnerability, and vulnerability to the amygdala means risk. Imagine walking across a clearing in a dense forest. For your ancestors, stepping into the open meant leaving behind the cover of trees where predators might not see you. The clearing offered the chance of food, water, or alliance, but it also offered the risk of being seen. The amygdala, in its eternal vigilance, still reacts as though every clearing hides eyes waiting to pounce. Today, the clearing may be a job interview, a first date, or an idea shared online, yet your body trembles as though wolves still prowl at the edge. Here lies the paradox. The watchtower has no sense of time. It does not understand that centuries have passed, that the risks of ancient forests have transformed into the challenges of modern life. It treats the boardroom and the stage, the new city and the unfamiliar conversation, as though they were all the same, exposure, and exposure, in its logic, is danger. Science shows that when the amygdala is stimulated, even by neutral or positive cues, the body prepares as if for harm. Heart rate accelerates, cortisol flows, muscles tense. This happens in fractions of a second before conscious thought arises. You may believe you chose to hesitate, to procrastinate, to withdraw, but in truth, the choice was made for you in the watchtower long before awareness arrived. You are handed the aftertaste of the alarm, and only then do you craft a reason. I wasn't ready. I'll do it later. Maybe this isn't for me. Think of it this way. The amygdala is like a smoke detector in your home. It does not distinguish between the smoke of a candle and the smoke of a fire. Its job is to react first, to signal loudly, and to let the rest of your system decide afterward whether the danger was real. The problem arises when the alarm is so frequent, so indiscriminate, that you begin to mistake the smell of your own success for the smoke of catastrophe. Philosophically, this reveals a haunting truth. What you call self-sabotage may not be self-hatred at all. It may be love in its most primitive form, a love that says, stay safe, a love that believes comfort is life, even if it costs you growth. The watchtower is not your enemy, it is an overprotective guardian, raising its sword even when no battle waits. And yet, as with all guardians, it must one day learn restraint. Imagine a castle where the guards panic at every shadow, slamming the gates even when friends approach. Such a fortress becomes a prison. So too does a mind where the amygdala rings every bell at every sign of change. Here, the question deepens. How do you teach an ancient sentinel that the very thing it fears, exposure, risk, transformation, can also be the path to thriving? The answer begins with awareness. By naming the watchtower, by recognizing its alarms for what they are, you gain the smallest yet most powerful foothold of freedom. Pause here. Think of the last time you sabotaged yourself. Perhaps you delayed sending that message, declined that invitation, abandoned that project halfway. Beneath the excuse you told yourself, can you hear the alarm bell? Can you sense the watchtower scanning the horizon, whispering, "Not safe, not yet, retreat"? It is a startling realization, but once you see it, you can no longer mistake the alarm for the truth. The amygdala shouts, but it does not decide. It warns, but it does not command. You have always had the ability to listen without obeying. Still, the watchtower is not alone. It calls upon other allies in the brain, messengers of stress that flood your body with signals of urgency. When cortisol surges, when the storm of stress rises just as victory draws near, you feel not triumph but dread. The question then is no longer whether the amygdala warns, it is how the rest of your body responds to its call. And so, while the watchtower lights its torches, another network stirs in the shadows. Hormones race, breath shortens, the body prepares for battle. This is the second layer of self-sabotage, hidden not in thought but in chemistry. The stage is set, and the question lingers in the air. If success excites the watchtower's alarm, how does the flood of stress deepen the resistance even further? Picture yourself standing just before the finish line of a race. Your chest heaves, your legs burn, and the ribbon flutters in the distance. You can already imagine the weight of the medal, the warmth of applause, the pride swelling in your chest. And yet, as the line draws closer, another sensation creeps in. Your breathing turns shallow, a knot twists in your stomach. Your thoughts scatter like startled birds. Instead of joy, a surge of unease rises. Victory is near, and your body feels as though it is bracing for disaster. This is the paradox of stress at the threshold of success. The same systems that should be celebrating are instead sounding alarms. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, flows through your bloodstream as if danger lurked nearby. Your muscles grow tense, your digestion slows, your mind sharpens on threats real or imagined, and all of this can happen not after a failure, but just before a triumph. Why does the body respond this way? The answer lies in evolution. Long ago, the moments just before a reward were often the riskiest. Imagine an ancestor spotting fruit hanging from a high branch. The sight of the prize would quicken the pulse, but climbing meant exposure, meant falling, meant predators waiting nearby. Anticipation itself became stressful because it meant risk was imminent. To this day, your body inherits that response. It cannot separate the thrill of achievement from the tension of threat. Think of cortisol as a double-edged sword. In small doses, it sharpens attention, quickens reflexes, primes you to act. But when levels surge too high, it drowns focus in anxiety, replacing clarity with doubt. It whispers, what if you stumble? What if they see you fail? What if success only sets you up for loss? The very hormone that once gave your ancestors a survival edge now tempts you toward hesitation, procrastination, retreat. Consider an example from modern life. A student studies for weeks, mastering every concept, preparing for the exam that could change her career. The night before, she cannot sleep. Her body hums with cortisol. Her thoughts spiral into what-ifs. She sits at the desk, but her mind betrays her with fog. She knows the answers, yet the stress of anticipation robs her of clarity. In her nervous system, the exam is not an opportunity. It is a predator crouching in the grass. The metaphor extends further. Stress before success is like thunder before a storm. Sometimes it is only noise, a warning without consequence. Other times it heralds a downpour that soaks everything. The brain cannot always tell the difference, and so it reacts with the same readiness each time. What should be excitement becomes agitation. What should be momentum becomes paralysis. Philosophically, this invites a deeper question. Is it possible that the fear of losing success feels heavier than the fear of never reaching it? To stand at the edge of victory is to glimpse a life that could be yours, but once glimpsed, the possibility of losing it becomes unbearable. In this way, cortisol is not only a hormone of stress, it is the messenger of attachment. It says, this matters now, therefore it is dangerous to lose. That is why you sometimes find yourself sabotaging moments of progress. The closer you draw to the finish line, the more your body screams retreat. The essay remains unwritten until the deadline passes. The opportunity is left unanswered. The relationship ends before it deepens. The subconscious reasoning is simple. If you turn back before the prize is in hand, you never risk the pain of losing it. And yet, hidden inside this cruel logic is a kind of twisted protection. Your brain believes it is sparing you heartbreak by raising your stress before you succeed. The flood of cortisol is its way of urging caution, better not to leap than to leap and fall. But in the modern world, where failure rarely means death, this caution can shrink your life instead of saving it. Pause here and imagine another metaphor. Think of a bowstring pulled taut. The tension is necessary to launch the arrow, but if the string is pulled too far, it may snap, leaving the arrow unfired. Stress is that tension. Without it, there is no action. With too much, there is paralysis. Success, therefore, often depends not on removing stress entirely, but on finding the point where the string is tight enough to shoot, yet not so tight that it breaks. Science confirms this balance. Researchers call it the Yerkes-Dodson law. Performance improves with arousal up to a point, but then declines as stress grows excessive. Your best moments often come not in perfect calm, but in that fragile balance where focus is sharp yet not overwhelming. The challenge then is not to silence cortisol, but to learn its rhythm, when it serves you and when it sabotages you. Reflect on your own life. Can you recall a time when anticipation made you withdraw, even though you longed for the outcome? Was it truly fear of failure, or was it the stress of almost winning? Many people discover that the pressure of nearing success feels more unbearable than the comfort of mediocrity. In this sense, the stress response does not protect you from failure, it protects you from change. And here lies the crux. Change itself is stressful, because it threatens the familiar. Even if the new life is brighter, safer, richer, the body clings to what it knows. Cortisol rises, not only in the face of loss, but in the face of transformation. Your brain says, better the known pain than the unknown joy. But is that really living? Or is it simply surviving in a smaller circle, mistaking safety for life? This is the philosophical wound of self-sabotage. It reveals how often survival and thriving stand at odds. To protect one, the brain sacrifices the other. Yet awareness is the first fracture in this cycle. When you feel stress mount just before success, you can learn to see it not as a sign of weakness, but as the echo of an old survival system. You can whisper back to your body, I see the alarm, but the danger is not real. I can step forward anyway. Still, another puzzle remains. If dopamine is the fuel that drives you toward the prize, why does the same brain that gives you this fuel also tempt you away with every nearby distraction? Why do you sometimes reach for your phone, for food, for escape, when you should be reaching for the finish line? The answer lies in dopamine's double face, the force that propels and the trickster that detours. You are sitting at your desk, eyes fixed on the glowing screen. The task before you could change everything. A proposal, a design, a piece of work that holds the seed of recognition. For a moment, you feel the pull forward, a subtle current in your chest that whispers, do it now, this matters. But then, almost without thought, your hand drifts to your phone. A small red notification catches your eye. You open it. Minutes pass, then an hour. The current has shifted. The task waits unfinished. What just happened? The same brain that filled you with energy to chase your goal also seduced you into distraction. The same system that fuels your ambition also fuels your avoidance. This is the double face of dopamine, the molecule of both drive and detour. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that is a simplification. It does not give you pleasure directly. Rather, it signals anticipation, the promise of reward. It is the spark that lights before the fire, the hunger that rises before the feast. Without dopamine, you would not move, strive, or reach. It is the force that paints the future in bright colors and urges you toward it. But dopamine has no loyalty to what you truly value. It responds not to the worth of the goal, but to the immediacy of the reward. A major achievement weeks away competes in the same neural currency as the ping of a message or the sweetness of sugar on your tongue. The nearer, easier prize often wins. And so while one part of you longs for success, another part leaps at every glittering distraction along the path. Imagine a compass that points not to the highest mountain, but to the nearest shiny object. That is dopamine at work. It propels you forward, yes, but not always forward in the direction of your long-term vision. Sometimes it drives you in circles, chasing sparks instead of stars. Philosophically, this reveals a sobering truth. Your life is not simply shaped by what you want, but by what you repeatedly allow your brain to want in the moment. A person who longs for greatness but constantly indulges in lesser rewards may live forever at the edge of potential, never stepping fully across. Self-sabotage is not always the grand act of quitting. Sometimes it is the 1,000 small detours of dopamine pulling you gently off the road until you find yourself lost. Science offers a striking metaphor. In experiments with rats, researchers discovered that when dopamine pathways were stimulated, the animals pressed a lever for hours, neglecting food, water, even rest. They did not chase because the reward was meaningful. They chased because the anticipation itself became irresistible. In humans, the principle is the same. The scroll of endless news feeds, the sweet hit of junk food, the fleeting validation of likes, each one a lever, each one lighting the same circuits that once drove us to seek survival. And yet, dopamine is not the villain. Without it, ambition collapses. People with depleted dopamine pathways struggle even to rise from bed, to plan, to act. The molecule is not your enemy. It is a force that must be directed, like a river. Left unguided, it floods the nearest valley. Guided, it can irrigate the fields of your deepest goals. Pause and reflect. Think of a time when you felt unstoppable momentum, perhaps studying with focus, training with intensity, building something that consumed you in the best way. That energy, that forward surge, was dopamine aligned with meaning. It is proof that the river can be channeled, that the current can serve you. But why then does the brain so often betray you? Why, at the very threshold of meaningful work, does dopamine turn traitor and lure you to something trivial? The answer lies in the architecture of reward. Your brain evolved in a world where immediate gains often meant survival. Fruit on a tree, fire in the dark, the warmth of touch. Long-term projects, abstract goals, distant achievements, these were luxuries, not necessities. The circuitry still reflects that bias. Here is the philosophical wound. Success in the modern world demands what the ancient brain resists: delayed gratification. The structures that once protected you by favoring immediacy now limit you by sabotaging patience. To create, to build, to endure, these require holding the vision of a reward far away, resisting the countless smaller prizes glittering at your feet. And yet, within this tension lies possibility, for the brain is not fixed. The pathways of dopamine are malleable, shaped by habit and focus. Every time you resist a trivial reward and take a step toward a deeper one, you are training your circuits to value the long arc over the short spark. Think of it as teaching your compass to recognize true north. The work may feel slow, but the rewiring is real. With practice, your brain begins to anticipate joy not only in the immediate, but in the progress itself. Small milestones become sources of motivation. The distant goal no longer feels unreachable, because dopamine has been trained to light each step along the way. Here we find an empowering reflection. Self-sabotage is not proof of brokenness, but of untamed energy. The same force that distracts you is the force that can drive you. The double face of dopamine reveals not a curse, but a choice, whether to chase sparks or to channel fire. And yet, choice alone is not enough. For while dopamine seduces you into detours, other saboteurs wait quietly within: the comfort of delay, the safety of waiting, the quiet pleasure of avoiding the task altogether. This is procrastination, the silent hand that pulls you back just as you lean forward. Quick pause. So far, the Watchtower, amygdala flags change as risk, stress, cortisol rises at the brink of victory, and dopamine can fuel you but also detour you. Next, how the brain soothes fear with procrastination. You sit before the blank page, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. You know the deadline is approaching. You know the task is important. And yet, instead of beginning, you find yourself reaching for a glass of water, adjusting the chair, checking the time again. Minutes slip into hours, hours into days. The work waits untouched. It feels almost absurd. How can something you want, something that could bring you pride and progress, be the very thing you avoid? This is procrastination, the silent hand of self-sabotage. Unlike distraction, which pulls you towards something else, procrastination holds you in place. It whispers, not yet, later, tomorrow. It is not laziness, though it may look like it from the outside. It is in fact a strategy of the brain, a way to reduce anxiety in the moment by postponing the source of discomfort. Science shows that procrastination is tied not to poor time management, but to emotion regulation. When you face a task that stirs fear, fear of failure, of judgment, of inadequacy, The amygdala and stress circuits activate. The discomfort grows sharp. To soothe it, the brain chooses delay. By not starting, you avoid the feeling of potential failure. For a short time, relief washes over you, but soon the cycle tightens. As the unfinished task grows heavier, the stress returns stronger, and avoidance deepens. Imagine a child afraid of diving into cold water. They walk to the edge of the pool, shiver, then step back. In that moment, stepping away feels good. Relief replaces dread, but the water has not changed. The longer they wait, the colder it seems, the harder it becomes to leap. Procrastination works in the same way. The relief of postponement is temporary, but it strengthens the habit of avoidance. Philosophically, procrastination reflects a deeper paradox. You are not avoiding the task itself, but the feelings the task awakens in you. The report, the project, the letter, these are not inherently terrifying. What terrifies you is what they symbolize: exposure, judgment, the possibility of not being enough. Procrastination is your brain's attempt to shield you from these inner storms, even if it costs you progress. Consider an artist staring at a canvas. Each brushstroke feels heavy, as if it might reveal whether talent exists or not. The fear of discovering failure paralyzes the hand. Better to wait, says the brain, than to risk finding out you cannot create what you dream. Yet in that waiting, the dream withers. The avoidance that once felt protective becomes destructive. In neuroscience, this cycle is reinforced by dopamine as well. When you avoid the task, you receive a small reward, the relief of escape. The brain remembers this reward, and the pattern strengthens. Discomfort arises, avoidance follows, relief arrives. Over time, the circuit becomes automatic. Procrastination is no longer a choice. It is a conditioned response, etched into the pathways of habit. Think of it as a loop. Anxiety, avoidance, relief, regret. Round and round it spins, until you begin to mistake the loop for your identity. I am a procrastinator, you say, as though it were who you are, rather than what your brain has learned to do. But here is the hidden truth. Procrastination is not a fixed trait, it is a learned strategy, and strategies can be unlearned. The same circuits that bind you to delay can be rewired toward action. The first step, as always, is awareness, seeing procrastination not as proof of laziness, but as evidence of fear disguised as comfort. Pause here and consider, what is the task you avoid most? What emotion hides beneath it? Is it the fear of imperfection, of being seen, of losing control? Once you name the feeling, procrastination loses some of its power. The silent hand is no longer invisible. Philosophically, procrastination reveals something profound about human nature. We are creatures who would rather suffer tomorrow than feel pain today. We mortgage our future selves to protect our present selves, but in doing so, we shrink our possibilities, living in a perpetual almost. And yet, there is a gentleness hidden here too. Procrastination is not cruelty, it is your brain's way of saying, I sense danger, let me give you time. The tragedy is that in modern life, the danger is not lions or cliffs, but deadlines and opportunities. The brain has not yet learnt the difference. The key, then, is not to fight procrastination with shame, but to retrain it with compassion, to show your brain, step by step, that beginning does not equal catastrophe, that the discomfort of starting is brief, while the relief of avoidance is fleeting, to rewire the loop so that action, not escape, brings the reward. Think again of the child at the pool. The water still feels cold, but if they dip one toe then another, the body learns it is survivable. Soon they are swimming, the fear forgotten. So it is with work, with dreams, with any task that looms like a shadow. Begin in micro steps, and the silent hand loosens its grip. Still, procrastination is only one face of self-sabotage. There is another, subtler mask, one that wears the appearance of excellence, of high standards, of striving for the best, yet beneath its polished surface hides the same fear of failure. This mask is perfectionism. The question becomes, if procrastination keeps you still through avoidance, how does perfectionism entrap you by demanding too much? You sit at your desk once again, the page no longer blank but covered with words, yet instead of relief, you feel a gnawing unease. You read the lines, erase them, rewrite them, only to erase them again. Hours pass, and the work never feels finished. No matter how much you refine, adjust, polish, a voice whispers, it is not enough, not yet, not perfect, and so, what began as creation dissolves into endless correction, until the deadline looms and the piece is never shared. This is perfectionism, the saboteur disguised as ambition. To the outside world, it looks like dedication, high standards, even excellence. But beneath its polished mask lies fear. Fear of being judged, of being exposed, of being revealed as less than what you hope to be. Perfectionism is not about reaching the highest quality, it is about avoiding the shame of imperfection. Science reveals that perfectionism is closely tied to the same circuits that govern fear and anxiety. The amygdala flares not only at external threats, but at the possibility of internal failure. When you strive for flawlessness, what you are truly seeking is safety, safety from criticism, rejection, disappointment. The endless revisions are not attempts at beauty but at invisibility, a way to hide the truth that nothing created by human hands can ever be flawless. Consider the metaphor of a sculptor chiseling stone. At first, each stroke shapes the figure, bringing form from chaos. But if the sculptor never stops, if they chip endlessly in pursuit of perfection, the figure erodes into dust. So too with your work, your goals, your life. At some point, refinement ceases to build and begins to destroy. Philosophically, perfectionism asks a haunting question. Do you seek to create, or do you seek to avoid being seen as inadequate? The two may look similar from afar, but their essence is different. Creation accepts imperfection as part of growth. Avoidance demands endless polish, because anything less than perfect feels like exposure. Think of a student who spends weeks rewriting the introduction to a paper, yet never finishes the body, or an entrepreneur who delays launching a product, waiting for the flawless version that never comes, or a person who avoids intimacy, believing they must first become the perfect partner before allowing themselves to be loved. Each case reflects the same illusion. If I can remove every flaw, then I will be safe. But the truth is that perfection does not exist, not in art, not in science, not in love. The pursuit of perfection is the pursuit of control, and control over life's chaos is an illusion. What perfectionism truly creates is paralysis. Better no work released than imperfect work revealed. Better no relationship entered than a flawed self exposed. Science offers a striking image here. In brain imaging studies, perfectionists show heightened activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in detecting errors. Their brains light up not with satisfaction at progress, but with alarm at mistakes. To them, the smallest flaw feels magnified, overwhelming, intolerable. The brain is not celebrating growth, it is bracing for failure. And yet there is a tenderness hidden inside this harsh pattern. Perfectionism is not cruelty, it is your brain's misguided attempt to keep you safe from judgment. The constant polishing, the endless revisions, are a shield you raise to protect yourself from the sting of rejection. The tragedy is that the shield also blocks connection, creativity, and growth. Pause here. Think of something you abandoned because it did not meet your own impossible standard. Was it truly unworthy, or did you demand perfection as a condition for acceptance? How many dreams are buried not because they were small, but because they were not flawless? Philosophically, perfectionism reflects a deeper human dilemma. We long to be loved, yet we fear to be seen as we are. So we polish ourselves into masks, believing only the mask is worthy of affection. But the paradox is cruel. The mask may be admired, but it is the flawed human self beneath that longs to be loved. In hiding flaws, we also hide the very qualities that make us real. Imagine for a moment a violinist on stage. The bow trembles, a note wavers slightly off pitch. And yet, in that imperfection, the audience feels something raw, something alive. Perfection would have been sterile. The flaw made the music human. So it is with your life. The cracks are not signs of failure, but of authenticity. Still, perfectionism is not easily released. It is a habit carved deep, reinforced by years of believing only flawless effort earns approval. To challenge it requires reframing success, not as the absence of mistakes, but as the presence of growth. Each finished imperfect act becomes a rebellion against the tyranny of flawlessness. Each time you say good enough is enough, you train your brain to value completion over concealment. And yet, even as you loosen the grip of perfectionism, another saboteur waits. This one does not keep you from finishing your work, it keeps you from keeping your bonds. Just when intimacy deepens, when trust begins to form, this saboteur stirs, whispering that closeness is dangerous. It is the pattern of breaking bonds before they bloom. The question becomes, if procrastination avoids action, and perfectionism avoids imperfection, why does your brain sometimes sabotage not your tasks, but your relationships? You find yourself at the beginning of something fragile yet promising, a friendship that feels unusually deep, a romance just starting to open like a flower, a collaboration filled with possibility. Everything suggests growth, connection, trust, and then, without warning, you pull back. A sharp word, an unexplained silence, a sudden retreat. You watch the bond strain, then snap, and afterward you wonder, why did I do that? This is relational self-sabotage, the tendency to break bonds before they bloom. On the surface, it looks like avoidance of intimacy or commitment, but beneath it lies the same machinery that governs all forms of self-sabotage, the ancient circuits of protection. The amygdala, ever alert to danger, sees closeness not only as comfort but also as risk, for to connect is to become vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to risk pain. Science shows that the brain responds to social rejection with the same neural pathways that process physical pain. To lose connection hurts as much as a wound to the body. And so, paradoxically, the brain sometimes tries to protect you from that wound by ending the connection first. Better to retreat early, it reasons, than to risk being left, betrayed, or disappointed later. Imagine holding a delicate glass vase. You love it, yet you fear it might slip and shatter. So rather than endure the anxiety of possibly breaking it, you set it down, or worse, you drop it yourself, ending the suspense. Relational sabotage works in the same way. The pain of loss is anticipated, so the brain chooses control. If I end it now, at least the loss is mine to decide. Philosophically, this reveals a profound paradox about human nature. We long for connection more than almost anything, yet we fear it with equal intensity. To be loved is to risk being unloved. To trust is to risk betrayal. The same heart that yearns for closeness carries the scars of past pain, and the brain remembers those scars vividly. Each new bond awakens the echo of old wounds, and the watchtower rings its alarm. Consider the child who grows up hearing that love is conditional, that affection can be withdrawn. Their nervous system learns that bonds are unstable, unpredictable. As an adult, when someone begins to care for them, the old circuitry activates. This cannot last. Better to escape first. The pattern is not chosen consciously. It is written in the body, in the rhythms of cortisol and adrenaline, in the memory of nights when comfort turned to absence. This is why you sometimes say things you don't mean, why you create distance just as closeness begins. It is not cruelty, it is fear, fear disguised as control. The brain convinces you that pushing away is safer than being left behind. Imagine again the fortress with its watchtower. When strangers approach, the guards grow tense, but sometimes, even when friends approach, the same alarm sounds. The gates close, not because danger is certain, but because safety cannot be guaranteed. The fortress survives, but it remains empty. Science reveals that attachment styles, patterns of closeness and distance, are deeply tied to these survival circuits. Avoidant attachment, for example, often emerges when early caregiving was inconsistent. The brain learns to protect itself by minimizing reliance on others. Anxious attachment, on the other hand, develops when love was unpredictable, creating a heightened sensitivity to signs of withdrawal. Both are forms of relational self-sabotage. One pushes away, the other clings so tightly that bonds fray. Philosophically, relational sabotage raises a haunting question. Do you destroy bonds because you fear they are fragile, or because you fear you are unworthy of them? Often it is both. The brain seeks the safety of solitude, even when the heart aches for connection. It whispers, better to be alone by choice than abandoned by surprise. Pause for a moment and reflect. Can you recall a relationship where you withdrew just as it deepened? What story did you tell yourself at the time that the person wasn't right, that the timing was wrong, that you weren't ready? Beneath those stories, could it be that the true reason was fear of vulnerability, fear of being truly seen? And yet there is hope hidden in this pattern. Just as the brain can learn to associate success with safety, it can also learn to associate closeness with trust. Each time you allow a bond to deepen despite the alarm, you teach the watchtower a new lesson. Connection does not always end in pain. Slowly, the alarms grow quieter. Slowly, the gates open wider. Philosophically, this requires a profound act of courage to accept that love is never without risk, that intimacy always carries the possibility of loss. But to refuse intimacy is to guarantee loss, the loss of what might have been. To choose connection, even under the shadow of fear, is to choose life over mere survival. Still, the brain resists. It clings to comfort, to the known, even when the known is loneliness. This pull is not limited to relationships. It is the broader force that keeps you in the familiar, even when the familiar hurts. It is the magnetic pull of comfort itself, the reason you return again and again to the same patterns, the same routines, the same limitations. Checkpoint. You've seen delay, perfection, and early exits as protection, not weakness. Next, why comfort pulls you back, homeostasis, how the thermostat of identity resets you, and the clash of beliefs. You wake up each morning and move almost automatically through familiar motions, reaching for the same mug, sitting in the same chair, scrolling through the same streams of information. There is a strange safety in repetition. Even when you wish for change, even when you dream of new paths, you find yourself circling back to what you know. The familiar exerts a quiet gravity, a pull that keeps you orbiting old habits. This is the magnetic force of comfort. From the perspective of your brain, comfort is not about pleasure alone. It is about predictability. Predictability means survival. The mind is an organ of patterns, constantly scanning for what can be anticipated. When life unfolds as expected, stress decreases, resources are conserved, and danger feels distant. When life veers into the unknown, even toward something good, the alarms rise. The unknown equals risk. Science calls this drive homeostasis. It is the body and brain's instinct to maintain balance, to return to what feels steady. Think of a thermostat set at a particular temperature. No matter how the environment changes, the thermostat pulls the room back toward its set point. So too does your brain pull you back toward the life you already know, even if that life is uncomfortable. Imagine a prisoner who has lived for years inside the same narrow cell. One day, the doors swing open. Freedom stretches wide before them, sunlight spilling across fields. And yet the prisoner hesitates. The cell, though confining, is familiar. Freedom, though beautiful, is uncertain. Many step back into the cell, not because it is better, but because it is known. This is how the brain treats comfort, as a prison disguised as safety. Philosophically, this raises an unsettling question. Do you truly prefer the familiar, or do you fear the unknown so deeply that the familiar feels preferable, no matter its cost? Often, what we call comfort is simply the absence of immediate threat, but the absence of threat is not the same as the presence of fulfillment. Consider habits you know are harmful, staying too long in a draining job, returning to unhealthy relationships, numbing yourself with distractions. Each carries pain, but also predictability. You know how the story unfolds, and the brain, ever loyal to patterns, convinces you this is better than facing the uncertainty of change. The comfort zone becomes a cage built of routines. Science offers a metaphor here. Neural circuits strengthen with use, like paths in a forest becoming trails. Each time you repeat a behavior, the path deepens, the journey feels smoother. To step off the trail into new terrain is harder, slower, uncertain. The brain resists, tugging you back to the path already carved. Comfort is not only psychological, it is anatomical, etched into the very wiring of your synapses. And yet, the comfort zone is deceptive. It reduces stress in the short term but increases it in the long term. By avoiding change, you may escape the temporary anxiety of the unknown, but you invite the chronic unease of stagnation. A life lived in circles becomes heavy with regret. The thermostat holds steady, but the air grows stale. Pause here. Reflect on your own life. Where have you returned again and again, not because it fulfilled you, but because it was familiar? What dreams have you postponed, because the path toward them felt uncertain, unpredictable, unsafe? The truth is that your brain often prefers a known discomfort over an unknown joy. Philosophically, this tendency exposes a central human dilemma: safety versus growth. Safety offers survival, growth offers transformation. To choose growth is to step willingly into the unknown, to accept the discomfort of change as the price of becoming. To choose safety is to remain within walls that protect you but also confine you. And yet, there is hope within this struggle. The brain is not static. Its set points can shift. Just as a thermostat can be reset, so too can your sense of comfort. With repetition, what was once terrifying becomes familiar, and what was once unfamiliar becomes the new normal. This is the secret of adaptation. The comfort zone can expand. Imagine learning to swim. At first, the water feels alien, threatening. Every splash triggers alarm. But with practice, with repeated exposure, the water becomes not an enemy, but a second home. The brain rewires, the body adapts, and what was once unsafe becomes comforting. This is how growth occurs, not by erasing fear, but by teaching the brain that the unknown can become the known. Still, there is a hidden danger in the comfort zone beyond habits and routines. It lies in the beliefs you carry about yourself. For even as you stretch toward success, if deep down you believe you are unworthy of it, the comfort zone will drag you back. The thermostat of identity will reset you to the level of achievement you secretly believe you deserve. This is the deeper mechanism of cognitive dissonance. When your external progress collides with internal beliefs, the brain resolves the tension by pulling you back to alignment. If you succeed outwardly but still carry the belief, I am not enough, you may unconsciously sabotage that success to match your inner script. Comfort in this case is not about routines, it is about self-concept. And so the question sharpens. If your brain pulls you back to comfort, even when it hurts, how does it resolve the tension when your actions and your beliefs contradict each other? Picture a room in winter. Outside, the wind howls and the cold presses against the windows. Inside, a small device glows with a steady light. The thermostat hums quietly, maintaining the temperature. If the air grows too cold, heat rises. If it grows too warm, the heat shuts off, always returning, always recalibrating, always pulling the room back to its set point. Now imagine that this thermostat does not control a room, but your very sense of self. It measures not temperature, but identity. It keeps you within the boundaries of what feels familiar, your habits, your relationships, your level of success. The moment you drift too far above or below, the invisible mechanism clicks, and you find yourself drawn back to the set point of your comfort zone. This is the hidden thermostat within, the brain's drive to maintain psychological homeostasis. It explains why sudden leaps forward often trigger sabotage. When you rise too quickly, achieving more than you believe you deserve, receiving more love than you thought possible, the thermostat interprets it as imbalance. The alarms sound and behaviors emerge to bring you back down: procrastination, doubt, withdrawal. Science suggests that much of this is tied to the balance between reward systems and fear systems in the brain. Dopamine urges you upward, toward achievement. The amygdala and stress hormones monitor whether that upward motion feels safe. If success feels aligned with your self-image, the thermostat allows the rise. If it feels alien, the thermostat resists, pulling you back with hesitation, distraction, even failure. Consider someone who grows up believing they are average. When they suddenly excel, perhaps receiving recognition, wealth, or admiration, the thermostat activates. The achievement feels inconsistent with the inner script. Without awareness, they may unconsciously create mistakes, burn bridges, or abandon opportunities, all to restore equilibrium between who they think they are and what they are experiencing. Philosophically, this reveals a haunting paradox. You do not simply live in the world as it is. You live in the world as your mind believes you deserve it. If your thermostat is set to scarcity, abundance feels wrong. If it is set to loneliness, intimacy feels unsafe. If it is set to mediocrity, excellence feels unbearable. You will sabotage to protect the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is pain. Pause here. Think of the moments when life seemed to offer you more than expected. Perhaps someone admired your work, or offered you an opportunity, or expressed deep affection. Did you embrace it fully, or did part of you recoil, thinking this cannot be real, this cannot last? That recoil is the thermostat adjusting, pulling you back to what feels consistent with your identity. Imagine again the thermostat in the room. What if it were faulty, set not to comfort but to cold? The heater might shut down even when the room is freezing. In the same way, your inner thermostat may be set not by truth, but by old beliefs, messages you absorbed in childhood, moments of rejection or failure that engraved themselves in your nervous system. These set points linger, shaping your future. Science shows that cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding two contradictory truths, is a powerful force in behavior. When your external reality says, I am successful, but your internal script says, I am unworthy, the brain seeks resolution. Often, instead of updating the belief, it sabotages the reality. The thermostat lowers the heat rather than raising its settings. The mind would rather shrink life than rewrite identity. Philosophically, this is the tragedy of many human lives. We do not fail because we lack ability, but because we cannot yet believe we are worthy of success. The inner thermostat convinces us that the extraordinary belongs to others, while we must return to the ordinary. Self-sabotage is the act of turning down the heat, just when the room grows warm. But there is hope. Just as a thermostat can be reset, so too can your internal set points. Through awareness, repetition, and self-compassion, the brain can learn that higher levels of success, love, and fulfillment are safe. Each time you accept praise without deflection, each time you hold on to opportunity without retreat, you nudge the thermostat upward. Over time, the set point shifts, and what once felt unbearable becomes normal. Pause and reflect. What is your thermostat set to? Do you allow yourself only brief glimpses of success before retreating? Do you accept only certain amounts of love before pulling away? Recognizing the setting is the first act of change. Still, another question emerges. If the thermostat explains why success feels unsafe, why does the brain create such tension in the first place? Why does it fight to align your outer achievements with inner beliefs, even when those beliefs limit you? The answer lies in the mechanics of cognitive dissonance, the brain's deep need for consistency. And so the next step of our journey asks, when your reality and your beliefs clash, how does the mind resolve the contradiction? Imagine standing before two mirrors that face each other. One reflects the image of who you are today, your habits, your choices, your familiar self. The other reflects the image of who you could become, your success, your potential, your dreamed self. As you look from one to the other, you feel a pressure in your chest, as if your very being is stretched between the two reflections. This is the tension of cognitive dissonance, the clash of beliefs within your mind. The brain is not designed to tolerate contradiction for long. When reality and belief diverge, the nervous system treats it as imbalance, much like a spinning top wobbling as it begins to fall. This imbalance feels uncomfortable, even threatening, and the brain rushes to resolve it. The question is, which side will it choose? Science shows that when actions and beliefs collide, the mind has two main options. It can update the belief to match the new reality, accepting that success is possible, that you are worthy, that growth is safe, or it can alter behavior to match the old belief, sabotaging progress so that life aligns once more with the conviction of unworthiness. Too often, the second path prevails. The thermostat of identity clicks, and the external world is shrunk to fit the inner script. Consider someone who believes deep down that they are not lovable. When they enter a relationship where affection is freely given, a dissonance arises. The reality says you are loved, but the belief says you are not. To resolve the tension, the brain may push them to create conflict, withdraw, or end the bond entirely, actions that restore consistency with the inner belief. The pain of loss is chosen over the discomfort of contradiction. Philosophically, this reveals a startling truth. The brain often prefers coherence over happiness. It would rather live in a painful but consistent story than in a joyful story that feels false. Identity, even when limited, feels safer than expansion. Pause here and reflect. Think of a time when life offered you more than you expected, an opportunity, recognition, affection. Did part of you resist, not because you didn't want it, but because it didn't feel like it belonged to someone like you? That dissonance is the mind's struggle to reconcile inner belief with outer gift. Imagine a garden surrounded by walls. Inside, you grow accustomed to certain plants, familiar, small, predictable. One day, a seed blows in from outside, sprouting into a tree that grows taller, brighter, more magnificent than anything within your walls. Instead of expanding the garden to hold it, you may cut it down, because it does not belong to the order you know. This is the clash of beliefs. Reality expands, but the walls of the mind resist. Science illustrates this in countless experiments. People told they are poor at a task often underperform even when capable, aligning behavior with belief. Students who believe intelligence is fixed give up more easily than those who believe it can grow. The dissonance between I can and I cannot is resolved not by reaching higher, but by retreating to the comfort of the lower. And yet, dissonance can also be a doorway. When embraced rather than avoided, it can push you to update your beliefs, to expand the boundaries of self. If you can sit with the discomfort long enough, the mind may slowly accept a new narrative. Perhaps I am capable, perhaps I am worthy, perhaps success can be mine. The wobbling top steadies, but at a higher level of balance. Philosophically, this is the essence of transformation, allowing contradiction to stretch you until the old belief cracks. Growth requires dissonance, because only contradiction can reveal where your current story is too small. Without the tension, you would never be forced to change. Pause again. Ask yourself, what beliefs about yourself feel immovable? That you are not creative, that you cannot lead, that you will always struggle. Each time life contradicts these beliefs, how do you respond? Do you sabotage the evidence, or do you let the belief begin to loosen? The clash of beliefs is not a flaw, but a signal. It tells you that you have reached the edge of your current identity. You stand between mirrors, one showing who you were, the other showing who you might be. To step toward the latter requires enduring the discomfort of contradiction long enough for the brain to reset. Still, this raises a deeper question. Why does the brain resist rewriting beliefs even when evidence demands it? Why does it cling so tightly to the old story? The answer lies not only in psychology, but in biology, in the long arc of evolution, where survival often depended more on caution than on change. And so our path leads us backward through time, to see how the inheritance of survival still shapes the fears of success. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast plain thousands of years ago. The air is sharp, filled with the smell of earth and smoke from nearby fires. Behind you lies the safety of your tribe, the circle of familiar faces, the warmth of shared food. Ahead lies the unknown, dense forests, hidden predators, rival groups. The horizon beckons with opportunity, new hunting grounds, richer soil, perhaps freedom, but the unknown also threatens survival. Step too far, and you may not return. This was the daily reality for your ancestors. Every decision carried the weight of life or death. To reach for more was to invite risk. To stay with the known was to remain safe. And slowly, over countless generations, the nervous system was shaped to favor caution. The body learned to equate the unfamiliar with danger, even when opportunity shimmered beyond. That inheritance is still alive within you. Today, the predators are no longer lions, and the rival tribes are not waiting with spears, yet your brain responds as though they are, standing to speak in front of an audience, applying for a new job, beginning a relationship. Each feels, at a primal level, like stepping onto that ancient plane. The amygdala scans, cortisol rises, the body whispers, better to stay where it is safe. Science supports this perspective. The human stress response, the quickened heartbeat, the narrowed focus, the surge of stress hormones, was designed for survival. It prepared the hunter to fight or flee. But in the modern world, these same responses activate, not in the face of predators, but in the face of opportunity. The body does not distinguish between threat and growth. To the survival brain, both are danger. Philosophically, this reveals a paradox. The very instincts that once kept you alive now hold you back from living fully. What was once wisdom has become limitation. The brain still measures risk with ancient scales, weighing the unfamiliar as heavier than the potential reward. Consider a simple example. Public speaking triggers more fear in many people than physical danger. Why? Because in ancestral times, to lose social belonging was to lose life itself. Exile meant death. Rejection was not a bruise to the ego, it was a threat to survival. That weight lingers in your nervous system. To stand before others and risk judgment feels as dangerous as walking into a predator's den. And so, when success demands visibility, the brain sometimes recoils. The inheritance of evolution whispers, stay small, stay hidden, stay safe. Self-sabotage, in this light, is not weakness, but survival misapplied. It is the echo of instincts designed for a world long gone. Pause here, think of your own hesitations, the times you pulled back just when the moment to advance arrived. Can you feel the ancient whisper beneath your fear? The whisper that says, do not risk the tribe's disapproval, do not step into the open, do not draw attention. These are not your personal flaws, they are the survival codes written into the species itself. Imagine for a moment that your brain is a cautious elder, sitting by the fire of that ancient camp. It has watched storms, predators, hunger, and loss. It believes its warnings are wisdom, and in truth they once were. But the world has changed, and the elder has not. You live not in plains of predators, but in cities of possibility. Yet the elder still whispers the same refrain, do not step too far, it is not safe. Philosophically, this leads to a profound realization. To grow is to rebel against your own biology. Success is not simply a matter of strategy or effort. It is an act of defiance against instincts that equate visibility with death. To choose growth is to say, thank you, ancient brain, but I am safe now. Science adds another layer. The prefrontal cortex, the rational planning part of your brain, is relatively young compared to the ancient survival systems. It can imagine futures, weigh long-term rewards, and override impulses, but it is slower, quieter, and more easily drowned out by the loud alarms of the amygdala. To grow, You must learn to let the prefrontal voice guide you past the survival alarms, to step onto the plane despite the warnings. Pause again. Imagine that plane once more. Your ancestors, who never stepped beyond the horizon, survived. Yes, but they never discovered what lay beyond. Those who took the risk found new lands, richer resources, stronger tribes. You carry both lineages within you, the cautious and the bold. The choice is which voice you heed. And yet this inheritance explains more than hesitation in the present. It also shapes the unconscious patterns you carry from the past, beliefs formed in childhood, warnings absorbed from parents, scars etched into identity. These too are echoes of survival, written not in species history, but in your personal history. And so the question unfolds, if evolution shaped the fear of success, how has your own early life shaped the invisible limits you now carry? Close your eyes and imagine a child sitting in a quiet room. The light filters through a window, dust motes drifting in the air. Outside, laughter of other children echoes faintly, but inside, the child hears different sounds, words spoken by adults, words repeated so often they sink into the marrow of identity. Don't aim too high. Don't be greedy. Stay quiet. Be careful. People like us don't do things like that. These words are not shouted. They are woven into daily life, into tone, into silence, into the looks exchanged when ambition shines too brightly. For the child, they are not advice but law, and slowly, without even knowing it, the nervous system records them as truth. This is how inherited warnings shape your future. They are not carved in stone, but etched into synapses, repeated until they become automatic. When you grow, when you attempt to step beyond those limits, the brain replays the old phrases, like protective spells, not for you, too dangerous, stay small. Science shows that childhood experiences are powerful shapers of neural pathways. In early years, the brain is highly plastic, meaning it wires itself rapidly in response to the environment. If encouragement is given, the circuits of confidence strengthen. If criticism or fear is constant, circuits of caution and self-doubt form instead. The amygdala becomes more sensitive, the stress response more easily triggered. What begins as survival in childhood becomes sabotage in adulthood. Imagine again the thermostat within. Only now, picture that thermostat being set by someone else, by parents, teachers, culture. If you were told to stay realistic, your settings were lowered. If you were told, don't embarrass yourself, your settings narrowed further. You grow into adulthood believing the thermostat is yours, unaware that its numbers were written by voices from your past. Philosophically, this raises an unsettling truth. Much of what you call self-sabotage may not be yours at all. It may be borrowed fear, inherited doubt, the echo of another person's limitations living inside you. You may reject opportunities not because you truly fear them, but because the child within still believes they are forbidden. Pause here. Reflect on phrases you heard often as a child. Were you told you were capable, or were you warned to avoid risk? Were you celebrated for effort, or only for perfection? These subtle messages shape the very boundaries of what you now believe is possible. Science reveals that these patterns are not only psychological but biological. Repeated emotional experiences strengthen neural circuits through a process called synaptic reinforcement. Each time you hear a message, each time you feel its emotional weight, the circuit deepens. By adulthood, these pathways fire automatically, often beneath awareness. You may think you are making a rational choice, but in truth, the decision was shaped long before by echoes of the past. Imagine carrying an invisible backpack filled with stones. Each stone is a phrase, a warning, a criticism. Some are light, barely noticed. Others are heavy, dragging you down with each step. You grow so accustomed to the weight that you forget the backpack exists. Only when you try to climb higher toward success, toward change, do you feel how heavy it is. The struggle is not only against the climb, but against the stones you never chose to carry. Philosophically, this suggests that self-sabotage is often not self-directed but inherited. You act against your own growth because you are still loyal to the rules of your childhood. To break those rules feels like betrayal, as though stepping into success means abandoning the people who taught you to stay small. And so, unconsciously, you protect the bond by sacrificing your potential. Pause again. Ask yourself, whose voice do you hear when you hesitate? Whose words echo when you doubt yourself? Are they truly yours, or do they belong to someone long gone? Science adds another layer. Trauma, even subtle, leaves biological traces. Stress hormones released in childhood can recalibrate the nervous system toward hypervigilance. Epigenetic changes, chemical tags on DNA, can make certain genes more active, influencing stress response for years to come. Inherited warnings may live not only in memory, but in biology itself, shaping the way your body reacts to success and risk. Yet there is hope. Just as circuits can be formed, they can be rewired. Each time you act despite the old warning, you weaken its hold. Each time you choose a new belief, you lay down a new path. Slowly the inherited voices grow quieter, replaced by your own. The backpack of stones grows lighter, as you recognize which ones are not yours to carry. Philosophically, this is an act of liberation. To see that many of your limits were never chosen by you is to reclaim the power to choose again. Success then becomes not only a personal victory, but a generational one, the act of breaking a cycle, of resetting the thermostat, of planting new seeds for those who follow. Still, inherited warnings are only one part of the puzzle. Beyond the words of others, your own unconscious builds patterns from experience. These patterns operate silently, shaping decisions without your awareness. They whisper not for you, not from memory, but from within your very identity. Where are we now? Ancient survival instincts clutch childhood warnings, set ceilings. Therefore success feels unsafe, because it breaks the old script. Up next, the invisible script, social pain, and why winning can feel like loss. Picture yourself walking across a stage, carrying a script in your hands. The audience is silent, waiting. But when you open the pages, you find the lines are already written. They are not your words, yet you feel compelled to speak them. Each sentence dictates how you behave, what you expect, how far you are allowed to go, and though you never remember choosing this script, you perform it day after day. This is the invisible script, the unconscious patterns that guide your choices without your awareness. These scripts are not external warnings repeated by others, but internalized codes etched into the nervous system. They whisper not only what you can do, but who you are. You are the one who doesn't finish things. You are the one who never belongs. You are the one who must not shine too brightly. Science reveals that up to 90% of your decisions are made unconsciously before your rational mind becomes aware of them. The brain is a prediction machine, constantly running scenarios based on past experiences. It uses shortcuts, automatic rules to save energy. These shortcuts are your invisible scripts. They allow you to move through life without deliberating every choice. But when the scripts are shaped by fear, trauma, or limiting beliefs, they guide you into sabotage. Imagine for a moment a marionette. The strings are invisible, yet they control each movement. You may believe you are free, but your actions follow a choreography written long ago. The invisible script pulls the strings, making retreat feel natural, failure feel inevitable, smallness feel safe. Philosophically, this raises a profound question. Are you truly free? Or are you enacting a play written by your past? Self-sabotage, then, is not rebellion, but obedience to rules you did not consciously agree to, but which shape you all the same. Pause here and reflect. Have you ever noticed yourself repeating the same mistake, entering the same kind of relationship, abandoning projects in the same stage, no matter how much you promised it would be different this time? These are not coincidences, they are the fingerprints of your invisible script. Science offers vivid examples. In experiments on habit formation, researchers find that the basal ganglia, deep structures in the brain, store repetitive behaviors as automatic loops. Once a habit is encoded, it operates outside awareness, triggered by cues. You may consciously want to change, but the unconscious script activates before you decide. This is why change feels so difficult. You are not fighting laziness, you are fighting automation. Consider the metaphor of a river. Over time, water carves channels into stone. The river flows the same path again and again, even if new directions are possible. Your unconscious scripts are those channels. Each time you repeat a behavior, each time you retreat from success, the groove deepens. Soon the water flows automatically, and you mistake the channel for destiny. Philosophically, this reveals the subtle cruelty of the unconscious. It protects you by repeating the familiar, even when the familiar harms you. Your invisible script is not an enemy. It is a guardian with outdated instructions. It tells you, stay small, stay hidden, because once upon a time, those rules kept you safe. The tragedy is that safety and thriving are no longer the same. Pause again. Ask yourself, what role have you been playing without question? The cautious one, the invisible one, the almost successful one. Whose story are you still performing? Awareness of the script is the first act of freedom, for once you see the lines, you can begin to rewrite them. Science suggests this rewriting is possible through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections. Each time you act against the old script, you weaken its hold and strengthen a new pathway. The marionette learns to loosen its strings. The river begins to carve new channels. Over time, the unconscious scripts lose their grip, replaced by patterns aligned with your true desires. Philosophically, this act is profound. It is the shift from living a borrowed story to authoring your own. Success then becomes not only an achievement, but a declaration. I am no longer bound by the script of the past. I am writing new lines, choosing new roles, creating a new play. Still, the invisible script is not the only force that makes success feel dangerous. Beneath it lies a deeper reality. The very experience of rejection and failure triggers pain in the brain, not metaphorical pain but physical. To move towards success is to risk this pain, and so another question arises: why does the brain treat social rejection as though it were a wound to the body? Imagine standing in a crowded room. Conversations hum, laughter rises, glasses clink. You gather the courage to share an idea, a story, perhaps a small piece of yourself. But when you speak, the room falls silent for a beat too long, and eyes turn away. Someone changes the subject. The sound of laughter resumes, but now it flows around you, not with you. In that moment you feel something sharp in your chest, as if you had been struck. It is not imagination, it is not metaphor. Rejection, science shows, activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your brain does not separate social wounds from bodily ones. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in processing physical pain, also lights up when you experience exclusion or humiliation. Evolution explains why. For early humans, belonging to the group was survival. To be cast out meant vulnerability, hunger, predators. The brain learned to treat rejection as injury, ensuring that you would avoid behaviors that risked exile. This is why the fear of failure in public, the dread of judgment, feels so visceral. It is not simply embarrassment, it is the brain sounding alarms of survival. To succeed often means stepping into visibility, but visibility invites scrutiny, and scrutiny awakens the ancient terror. What if I am cast out? Imagine again the fortress and its watchtower. When a predator approaches, the alarm rings. But when the tribe turns its gaze with suspicion, the alarm rings just as loud. To the watchtower, the two threats are indistinguishable. Rejection is danger. Approval is safety. Every step towards success risks the possibility of rejection, and so the brain hesitates, sabotaging the very act of stepping forward. Philosophically, this reveals a paradox. Success is often built on exposure, yet exposure is felt as peril. To grow is to invite judgment, and judgment carries the potential for pain as real as a wound. No wonder the brain sometimes prefers to remain unseen, better invisible than bleeding from rejection. Pause here and reflect. Can you remember a moment when social failure felt physical? Perhaps a silence after you spoke, laughter at your expense, or a dismissal of your work. Did your body not react? Heart sinking, stomach twisting, face burning as though struck. These sensations are the echoes of evolution, reminders that social pain and physical pain share a common root. Science offers striking evidence. In experiments, participants who recalled experiences of exclusion showed increased activation in pain-processing regions of the brain. In another study, painkillers such as acetaminophen reduced not only physical pain, but also feelings of social rejection. The body interprets exclusion so literally that the same remedies soothe both wounds. Philosophically, this carries profound implications. It means that every risk of success, sharing art, leading a team, daring to stand out, is not only psychological but physiological. The body prepares for injury even when the battlefield is only social. This makes sabotage seem almost logical. If success means risk of rejection, and rejection feels like pain, then avoidance feels like protection. Consider the metaphor of a flame. You wish to hold it because it offers light, but every time you reach, you are burned. Over time, you learn to stop reaching. Success is the flame, warm, illuminating, transformative, but the burn of social failure makes you pull back, teaching the body that reaching itself is dangerous. And yet, the story does not end there. For just as the brain links rejection with pain, it also links acceptance with profound reward, social approval, connection, belonging. all release neurochemicals such as oxytocin and dopamine, creating feelings of warmth and safety. This duality is powerful. Rejection wounds, but acceptance heals. To risk one is to open the possibility of the other. Pause again. Imagine the last time you felt truly seen and valued. Perhaps someone praised your effort, supported your dream, or welcomed your presence. Did you not feel the opposite of pain, a warmth spreading through your chest, a sense of wholeness? This is the paradox of the social brain. The same circuits that make rejection unbearable also make connection extraordinary. Philosophically, this suggests that self-sabotage in relationships and success is not only avoidance of pain, but also avoidance of possibility. By withdrawing before rejection, you also withdraw before connection. The walls you build to protect from hurt also block the very bonds that could nourish you. Science adds nuance here. The prefrontal cortex, the region of reasoning, can help reinterpret social failure. With awareness, you can remind yourself that judgment will not lead to exile, that rejection is not death. Each time you endure social discomfort without retreat, the brain learns a new association. Rejection hurts, but it does not destroy. Success brings exposure, but exposure does not equal annihilation. Still, another layer of sabotage hides here, for the brain does not only fear rejection after failure, it also fears the anxiety that comes with success itself. Sometimes, achieving the very thing you long for brings as much unease as losing it. Triumph can trigger fear, not relief. And so the next question emerges: why does the brain sometimes treat winning as a threat? And why can holding success feel as heavy as losing it? Imagine crossing a finish line. The crowd erupts, hands reach toward you, a medal is placed around your neck. You smile, but deep inside, something feels strange. Instead of relief, a sudden unease spreads through your body. The applause feels heavy, the recognition almost unbearable. You thought winning would silence the inner doubts, but instead, it amplifies them. Victory tastes sharp, like sweetness laced with bitterness. This is the hidden paradox. Sometimes, success feels like loss. The very moment you achieve what you longed for, anxiety floods in. Why? Because the brain does not only prepare for failure, it also prepares for what might follow success. If failure threatens self-worth, success threatens identity. Science shows that achieving goals triggers not only reward circuits, but also stress responses. Dopamine surges in anticipation, pulling you forward. But once the prize is in hand, the amygdala and cortisol systems may activate, asking, what if I lose this? What if I cannot keep it? What if I do not deserve it? The brain turns triumph into threat, not because it wishes to punish you, but because it equates uncertainty with danger. Consider someone who finally earns the promotion they dreamed of. On the outside, it is cause for celebration, but inside, stress rises. The new role means higher expectations, greater visibility, the risk of failing in front of more people. What was once a dream now feels like exposure. Success has transformed into a new battleground. Philosophically, this reveals a haunting truth. Success does not end the fear of failure, it magnifies it. Before success, failure is hypothetical. After success, failure is personal. You have more to lose, and the stakes feel higher. The applause becomes a weight you must carry, the recognition a responsibility you must uphold. Pause here. Think of a time you reached a milestone you once thought impossible. Did joy last, or did worry creep in quickly after? Did you feel pressure to maintain, to prove, to defend what you had earned? This is the brain's ancient bias, to guard against loss more fiercely than to celebrate gain. Behavioral science calls it loss aversion, the tendency to feel the pain of losing far more intensely than the pleasure of winning. Imagine holding a delicate glass trophy. At first it shines in your hands, but soon your grip tightens, fear grows. What if it slips? What if it shatters? The trophy was meant to be a symbol of triumph, but it becomes a burden of anxiety. This is how the brain can transform success into weight. Science provides evidence. Studies show that after achieving goals, cortisol often spikes rather than subsides. Athletes feel depression after victories. Students feel emptiness after exams. Even artists, after releasing their work, report post-success anxiety. The nervous system, designed to anticipate threats, struggles to relax even when the threat is gone. It searches for the next danger, the next potential loss. Philosophically, this means that success is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new challenge, learning to hold achievement without letting fear of loss consume it. To succeed is not only to climb, but to dwell at the summit without trembling at every gust of wind. Pause again. Ask yourself, what do you fear more, the possibility of never reaching your dream, or the possibility of reaching it and losing it? Many find the second fear more paralyzing, for failure can be explained away, but success changes who you are. If you lose it afterward, the fall feels sharper. Imagine a bird perched on a high branch. It has flown far, risen higher than before, but the higher the branch, the greater the fear of falling. The bird's wings have not changed, yet the mind trembles. So too with success. The higher you rise, the more fragile you feel. And yet there is another perspective. Success is not a fragile trophy to guard, but a milestone on a path that continues. The anxiety arises only when you treat success as final, as something that must be preserved perfectly. If instead you see it as a step in an ongoing journey, the fear of loss softens. You are not holding success, you are moving through it. Still, the brain resists this wisdom. It clings to the fear of loss as tightly as it clings to life itself. This is why even after success, sabotage may appear. Delays, doubts, sudden withdrawal. They are not evidence that you did not want success. They are evidence that holding success feels as dangerous as chasing it. Philosophically, this raises the ultimate question. If both failure and success trigger fear, what truly guides your choices? The answer may lie in a hidden truth about decision-making itself. Much of it happens before you are even aware of it. Your conscious mind believes it chooses, but your brain often decides in silence, milliseconds before awareness catches up. And so the next layer of the mystery unfolds. If the brain makes decisions before you think, how much of self-sabotage is chosen, and how much is written in the unseen rhythms of your mind? Imagine you're about to pick up a glass of water. You reach out, fingers curling around the smooth surface, lifting it to your lips. It feels like a simple conscious act, but neuroscience reveals a startling truth. The decision to move your hand was made by your brain before you ever felt yourself decide. By the time awareness caught up, the action was already set in motion. This is not limited to small gestures. Studies show that many of your choices, what to eat, what to say, even whether to persist or retreat, begin in unconscious brain activity seconds before you consciously choose. In laboratories, electrodes placed on the scalp detect patterns predicting decisions before the participant reports making them. Awareness, it seems, is the last to arrive at its own party. This raises a profound question. If so many decisions begin before thought, how much of your life is truly chosen, and how much is scripted by hidden neural rhythms? Self-sabotage, in this light, may not always be a deliberate act. It may be a pre-programmed reflex, the unconscious steering you away from risk before the conscious mind can protest. Imagine standing at the edge of a diving board. Your muscles tense, your body leans forward, and then, suddenly, you step back. You tell yourself you changed your mind, but in truth, the unconscious alarm fired first, shifting your body before your thoughts explained it. The story you tell, I wasn't ready, maybe next time, is an afterthought, a narrative built to justify a decision already made. Philosophically, this challenges the very concept of free will. Are you the author of your actions, or the narrator who explains them after the fact? If unconscious processes guide your steps, then self-sabotage is not a choice you make, but a script you inherit, a reflex disguised as decision. Science points to the brain's architecture for answers. The limbic system, the seat of emotion and survival, processes information faster than the prefrontal cortex, where conscious reasoning resides. This means feelings of fear, doubt, or caution can trigger responses before logic has time to intervene. You step back from opportunity before your rational mind can remind you of your goals. Consider the metaphor of a theater. Behind the curtain, stagehands move props, adjust lights, prepare scenes. By the time the curtain rises, the actors step into a world already arranged. So it is with your conscious mind. It steps onto the stage of decision after the unconscious has set the scene. The choices feel free, but the stage has already been prepared. Pause here, reflect on moments when you acted against your own intentions. Perhaps you promised yourself you would speak up, yet when the moment came, silence emerged. Perhaps you swore you would resist distraction, yet your hand reached for your phone before you realized it. These are not failures of willpower. They are signs that the unconscious made its move before awareness could catch it. Philosophically, this can feel unsettling, but it also reveals something hopeful. If unconscious processes shape decisions, then by reshaping those processes through practice, habit, and awareness, you can change the stage on which consciousness plays. Free will may not be absolute, but it is influence. You cannot stop the unconscious from moving first, but you can train it to move in new directions. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. Each time you practice a new habit, each time you override an old pattern, the unconscious scripts adjust. Over time, the reflex to sabotage can weaken, and the reflex to persist can strengthen. The stagehands begin to set the scene differently, so that when the curtain rises, your conscious choices align more naturally with your deeper goals. Imagine walking a forest path. At first, the trail is overgrown, difficult. Your unconscious mind prefers the old, well-worn trail of procrastination or retreat, but each time you walk the new path, choosing action, choosing courage, the trail clears. One day, without realizing it, you find your feet turn automatically toward growth. The unconscious has been retrained. Philosophically, this reframes freedom. You may not always control the first impulse, but you can shape the patterns that give rise to those impulses. To change your life is to change the stage before awareness arrives, to reset the hidden rhythms that guide you. Pause again. Ask yourself, what unconscious scripts have guided your steps? Do you retreat before risk? Do you distract yourself before completion? Do you end connections before they deepen? These are not conscious betrayals. They are reflexes carved by experience. But reflexes can be rewritten, one act at a time. Still, awareness alone is not enough. To rewrite unconscious scripts, you must first see them clearly. You must hold a mirror not only to your choices, but to the patterns beneath them. The next step then is learning to recognize sabotage in real time, to shine light on the hidden reflex before it takes over. Long-form recap. We mapped success through threat alarms, stress before victory, identity set points, and choices starting before awareness. Final stretch, awareness as mirror, rewiring reward, microdoses of success, interrupting the spiral, then brain as ally and ambition reborn. Imagine walking through a dimly lit corridor, walls lined with mirrors. At first glance, the reflections seem ordinary, repeating the shape of your body, the turn of your head, but as you look closer, you notice something strange. Some mirrors show you hesitating when you remember moving forward, others show you dropping things you thought you held. The reflections reveal not only what you do, but what you tend to do, again and again. These are not ordinary mirrors. They are mirrors of awareness, showing the patterns you perform unconsciously. Awareness is the first act of liberation. Until you see the script, you cannot change it. Until you name procrastination as fear, perfectionism as avoidance, retreat as protection, you remain captive to them. But once you hold them up to the light, they begin to lose their invisibility. What was reflex becomes recognizable, and what is recognizable becomes interruptible. Science supports this. Research on mindfulness shows that when people simply observe their thoughts without judgment, activity increases in the prefrontal cortex, the region that governs rational choice. Simultaneously, the amygdala's reactivity decreases. In other words, awareness itself changes the balance of power. By noticing a pattern, you weaken the automatic hold of survival circuits and strengthen the voice of reason. Imagine a thief moving in shadows. As long as no light shines, the thief acts freely, unseen. But the moment a lantern is lit, the thief hesitates. Awareness is that lantern. It does not erase the pattern, but it makes it harder for the pattern to move undetected. Philosophically, this suggests that freedom is not the absence of reflex, but the presence of recognition. You may still feel the pull to procrastinate, to perfect, to retreat. But when you recognize it as a reflex, you gain the smallest gap of choice. In that gap lies transformation. Pause here. Reflect on the last time you caught yourself mid-sabotage. Perhaps you were about to delay a task and suddenly realized, I am avoiding because I am anxious. Perhaps you heard yourself criticizing your work and realized, this is not pursuit of excellence, this is fear of imperfection. That moment of recognition did not make the pattern vanish, but it created a space where a different choice was possible. Science offers another insight. The act of naming emotions reduces their intensity. Studies show that when participants label their feelings, this is fear, this is shame, this is doubt, activity in the amygdala decreases and regulation improves. Awareness, then, is not passive observation, but an active rewiring. By naming the saboteur, you begin to disarm it. Consider the metaphor of waves on the ocean. Before awareness, you are tossed about, dragged by currents you cannot see. With awareness, You learn to stand on a surfboard. The waves still rise, the currents still pull, but now you ride them instead of being carried. The ocean has not changed. You have. Philosophically, this leads to a profound realization. Self-sabotage thrives in silence. It grows strongest when it is invisible, when you mistake it for truth. The moment you see it for what it is, its power begins to unravel. You realize procrastination is not laziness, but fear. You realize perfectionism is not strength, but avoidance. You realize retreat is not rejection of others, but protection of self. These realizations shift the narrative from shame to understanding, from condemnation to compassion. Pause again. Ask yourself, what patterns do you see when you hold the mirror of awareness? Which gestures repeat? Which excuses echo? Which fears disguise themselves as logic? These reflections are not accusations, they are maps. Each recognition marks a place where the unconscious once ruled, but where choice can now emerge. Science confirms that awareness reshapes habit loops. In experiments on smokers, those who practiced mindful awareness of cravings reduced smoking more effectively than those who relied only on willpower. The reason is clear: awareness interrupts the automatic loop, replacing unconscious reaction with conscious response. What was once a reflex becomes a decision. Philosophically, this reframes success. It is not the absence of fear, but the presence of awareness within fear. Growth is not about eliminating sabotage, but about noticing it quickly enough to choose otherwise. Success is not built in the absence of shadows, but in the courage to shine light on them. And yet, awareness alone is not the end. To see the saboteur is powerful, but to move beyond it requires more. It requires retraining the very systems of reward that often lure you astray. For awareness tells you this is a trap, but dopamine still whispers this feels good now. The next step then is learning to rewire reward, to train the brain to crave progress itself, to find joy not only in distraction, but in meaningful achievement. And so the next question emerges: if dopamine can lead you astray, how can you teach it to become your ally, rewarding growth instead of sabotage? Imagine walking through a dense forest, searching for a hidden path. You notice two trails, one wide, smooth, and familiar, the other narrow and overgrown. The wide path leads to the same place you have always gone, a small clearing of comfort, predictable and safe. The narrow path promises something different, perhaps richer, but the way is rough, uncertain. Your brain, without thinking, steers you toward the wide trail. Why? Because that is the path most often rewarded in the past. This is how your reward system works. The brain follows the trail of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that lights up circuits of anticipation and reinforcement. Each time you choose a behavior, and it leads to a satisfying result, dopamine marks that path as rewarding. The more often you walk it, the deeper the groove becomes, until it feels automatic. Self-sabotage is often nothing more than the brain repeatedly rewarded for avoidance. Science illustrates this clearly. When you procrastinate, you feel temporary relief. That relief itself is a reward, and dopamine encodes it. The brain learns avoidance reduces discomfort, do this again. Over time, the loop becomes stronger, until procrastination feels easier than progress. In this way, sabotage is not a mystery, it is a habit reinforced by the brain's own chemistry. Philosophically, this reveals a sobering truth. Your life follows not what you value most, but what you reward most. If small distractions give quick hits of dopamine, your brain will seek them, even at the expense of long-term goals. You may consciously desire success, but unconsciously, you crave the smaller pleasures that feel immediate. Pause here, reflect on your habits. How often do you reward distraction instead of discipline, comfort instead of courage? Each small choice is a vote, not only for the action, but for the future pattern your brain will repeat. The grooves you carve today are the trails you will walk tomorrow. But here lies the hopeful truth. The reward system can be rewired. Just as the brain once learned to find relief in avoidance, it can learn to find joy in progress. Neuroplasticity ensures that new behaviors, repeated and rewarded, can become the preferred paths. The challenge is to give the brain what it craves, frequent immediate feedback while aligning it with long-term goals. Imagine training a young puppy. If you wait too long to give a treat, the animal will not connect it with the behavior you want. But if you reward immediately after the desired action, the link is strong. Your brain is not so different. Large, distant rewards often fail to motivate because the link is weak. Small, immediate rewards strengthen the loop. Science supports this approach. Researchers show that breaking big goals into smaller milestones increases motivation. Each milestone achieved gives a small dopamine surge, reinforcing the behavior. Over time, progress itself becomes rewarding. The brain begins to crave the feeling of completion, the satisfaction of moving forward. Philosophically, this means that growth is not sustained by willpower alone, but by reshaping what feels good. To rewire your reward system is to teach yourself that success is not only the far-off mountain peak, but each step along the climb. The mountain remains daunting, but the trail becomes engaging. Pause again. Consider a personal example. Perhaps you struggle with writing, exercising, or learning a skill. Instead of waiting for the distant prize of mastery, can you create micro-rewards, acknowledging each page written, each workout completed, each lesson learned? These moments are not trivial. They are the new grooves your brain will follow. Another scientific insight deepens this truth. Dopamine is not only released at the moment of reward, but in anticipation of it. This means the brain can be trained to expect satisfaction from the process itself, not only the outcome. Athletes who learn to love training, artists who delight in the act of creation, professionals who value progress over perfection, all have rewired their reward systems to crave the journey, not just the destination. Philosophically, this reframes ambition. Success is no longer a finish line to cross someday, but a path to walk daily. When the journey itself becomes rewarding, sabotage loses much of its power. The brain no longer craves escape, because the act of moving forward feels good. Still, rewiring is not instant. The old grooves remain, tempting you back to avoidance, but with patience, repetition, and gentle reinforcement, the balance shifts. The narrow trail becomes smoother, easier, more inviting. One day, you realize your feet turn there automatically. Progress, once resisted, now feels natural. Pause once more. Ask yourself, what small rewards can you integrate into your efforts? Can you savor the satisfaction of a single step instead of waiting for the summit? Can you let the act itself be the source of joy? Each choice you make, each reward you assign, is a brushstroke on the canvas of your habits. And yet, even as the reward system can be retrained, another challenge remains, for success itself still feels dangerous, not only because of fear or identity, but because the exposure is too large, too sudden. The brain resists not only because of chemistry, but because of scale. The leap feels too great, the unknown too vast. The solution may lie in a gentler approach, exposing yourself to success in microdoses, teaching the nervous system to tolerate growth little by little. And so the next question emerges: if the brain resists sudden leaps, how can you gradually train it to feel safe in expansion? Imagine stepping into a cold lake. If you dive in all at once, the shock is overwhelming. Your breath catches, your muscles tighten, your instinct is to rush back to shore. But if you wade in slowly, first your toes, then your ankles, then your waist, the body adjusts. What once felt unbearable begins to feel natural. The same principle applies to success. The brain, like the body, often rejects sudden leaps, but adapts to gradual exposure. Self-sabotage often arises not because you cannot succeed, but because success arrives faster or larger than your nervous system can tolerate. The spotlight feels blinding, the recognition suffocating, the responsibility crushing, and so, unconsciously, you retreat, not because you don't want the prize, but because your inner world was not yet prepared to hold it. Science supports this idea through exposure therapy. In clinical settings, people with phobias are not forced to confront their greatest fears in a single leap. Instead, they face them in microdoses, gentle, repeated exposures that teach the brain the feared object is safe. Over time, the amygdala quiets, stress decreases, and what once triggered panic becomes manageable. Success can be treated the same way. Instead of aiming for transformation in a single act, you can expose yourself to visibility, responsibility, and growth in increments. Share a small piece of your work before releasing the whole project. Accept praise in brief moments before standing in the full glow of recognition. Take small risks in relationships before offering your whole heart. Each microdose tells your brain, this is safe, you can handle this. Philosophically, this reveals a deeper truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to grow your capacity step by step. You do not need to leap into the cold lake. You only need to take the next step forward. With each step, your nervous system rewires, your tolerance expands, your identity shifts. A person who once recoiled at small successes becomes the person who can hold larger ones with steadiness. Pause here. Reflect on a goal that feels overwhelming. Does the weight of the whole prevent you from beginning? Break it down. What is the smallest step that would still count as progress? Could you write one paragraph instead of a book? Share one idea instead of the whole plan? Take one action instead of transforming everything? These microdoses are not trivial. They are the training ground for resilience. Science shows that incremental progress not only reduces fear, but also builds confidence. Each successful step releases dopamine, reinforcing the behavior. The brain learns to expect safety in growth rather than danger. Over time, the association between success and stress weakens, replaced by success and reward. Consider the metaphor of climbing a mountain. From the base, the summit seems impossible. But if you fix your eyes only on the peak, your body feels overwhelmed, your spirit heavy. If instead you focus on the next foothold, the next ledge, the climb becomes bearable. Each step is a microdose of altitude, teaching your body to adjust. Eventually, without realizing it, you find yourself near the top. Philosophically, this reframes ambition. Too often, we imagine transformation as a single dramatic act, a leap into a new life, an overnight success. But true transformation is gradual. It is the accumulation of microdoses of courage, each one slightly beyond the comfort zone, each one expanding what feels possible. Success, then, is not a sudden explosion, but a slow unfolding. Pause again. Ask yourself, what microdoses of success can you begin to practice? If speaking to an audience terrifies you, can you start with a small group? If publishing your work feels too vulnerable, can you share it with one trusted friend? If pursuing a new career feels impossible, can you take one small step, reading, learning, experimenting before leaping? Each small exposure is a seed. Over time, seeds become forests. Science adds another insight. The nervous system learns safety through repetition. One exposure may reduce fear briefly, but repeated exposures ingrain the new pattern. This is why habits of small success are powerful. They tell the brain again and again, growth is survivable. Over months, what was once terrifying becomes ordinary, and what was once ordinary becomes a new foundation for further growth. Philosophically, this invites a shift in identity. As you accumulate microdoses, you stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids success, and begin to see yourself as someone who can handle success. The self-concept thermostat begins to reset. The invisible script starts to rewrite. You become not a person pretending to grow, but a person living growth daily. Still, the question remains. Microdoses can weaken sabotage, but how do you truly break the cycle, the spiral that keeps pulling you back into old patterns? Awareness, reward, exposure, each is powerful, but together they must converge into a turning point, a conscious interruption of the cycle. And so the next step awaits. If sabotage spins in loops, how do you interrupt the spiral and reclaim your momentum? Imagine a spiral staircase. At first, you climb with energy, circling upward, feeling the air grow lighter with each turn. But then, without realizing, your steps begin to slow. You pause, look down, feel the dizziness of height. A single hesitation pulls you back, and instead of rising, you start descending. Downward feels easier, familiar. Before long, you are back where you began, staring at the same doorway you left behind. This is the cycle of self-sabotage, progress, hesitation, retreat, repeat. The spiral is not random. Science shows that sabotage often follows predictable loops. Anticipation of success triggers anxiety, anxiety triggers avoidance, avoidance triggers temporary relief, and relief reinforces the pattern. The brain mistakes relief for safety, rewarding retreat with dopamine. Next time, the same pattern unfolds, only faster, deeper. Each loop tightens the spiral until it feels unbreakable. Philosophically, this spiral reflects the tension between two forces, the desire to grow and the instinct to remain safe. Both are part of you, pulling in opposite directions. Growth urges you upward, safety drags you downward. Sabotage is not the absence of willpower, it is the collision of instincts, the spiral born of conflicting drives. Imagine a storm at sea. The current pushes you forward, but the undertow pulls you back. If you fight blindly, you exhaust yourself, circling endlessly. To break free, you must understand the pattern of the waves. The same is true of sabotage. You cannot escape the spiral by brute force. You must interrupt it with awareness, choice, and a new rhythm. Science reveals practical tools for this. One is the pattern interrupt, a conscious action taken at the moment the loop begins. For example, when you feel the urge to procrastinate, instead of surrendering, you stand up, breathe deeply, and set a timer for 2 minutes of effort. The small disruption breaks the cycle, creating space for new behavior. Over time, these interruptions weaken the automatic loop, replacing it with a new one. Pause here, reflect on your own spirals. What is the moment where you usually turn back? Is it just before finishing, just before speaking, just before committing? That moment is the hinge of the spiral. If you can interrupt it, take one breath, one step, one small action, you shift the trajectory. The staircase no longer loops downward, it begins to rise again. Philosophically, this reveals a truth about freedom. It does not come from destroying old instincts, but from learning to step out of their rhythm. The spiral continues to exist, but you no longer dance to its tune. Instead, you create new steps, new loops, upward spirals built from conscious choice. Consider a metaphor from nature. A plant grows toward the sun, winding around obstacles, climbing higher, but if cut, it sometimes curls back, retreating toward the soil. If given support, a trellis, a guiding hand, it resumes its upward spiral. You too require supports, awareness, small wins, reminders of purpose. With them, your growth no longer collapses inward but extends outward. Science also shows the importance of self-compassion in breaking spirals. Harsh self-criticism strengthens the loop, increasing stress and reinforcing avoidance. Compassion, on the other hand, calms the amygdala and activates circuits of regulation. By forgiving yourself in the moment of sabotage, you reduce the emotional weight, making it easier to try again. Compassion is not indulgence, it is interruption. Pause again. Ask yourself, how do you usually respond when you sabotage yourself? With anger, shame, disappointment. These reactions feed the spiral, confirming the belief that you are broken. What if instead you responded with gentleness? This is a pattern, not a failure. I can begin again. That shift alone interrupts the loop, loosening its grip. Philosophically, this suggests that breaking cycles is less about force and more about kindness. Growth is not a war against yourself. It is a partnership with your nervous system, a dialogue with the parts of you that still believe they are protecting you. By honoring their caution while gently choosing otherwise, you break the spiral not through battle, but through balance. And yet, the spiral is not only about avoiding pain, it is also about misunderstanding the brain itself. You see the alarms and assume they are enemies, but what if the alarms were signals of care? What if the parts of your brain that sabotage you are not traitors but guardians who simply misinterpret the world? The next step of our journey asks this question: how do you stop seeing your brain as the enemy and begin to see it as an ally, one that can be guided, retrained, and befriended? Picture yourself standing before a locked door. On the other side lies the life you dream of: success, love, creativity, freedom. You push against the door, but it will not move. For years you have cursed the lock, blamed it for keeping you small. But then you look closer and realize the lock has always been on the inside, and the key has been in your own pocket. The lock is not an enemy, it is a guard that once kept you safe, but now simply needs to be shown the way forward. This is the shift from seeing your brain as a saboteur to seeing it as an ally. Every hesitation, every retreat, every wave of fear is not sabotage for its own sake. It is protection misapplied. The amygdala, the stress circuits, the invisible scripts, all are attempts to keep you alive. They are ancient guardians, still working as though the world were dangerous forests and hostile tribes. Their caution is not cruelty, it is care, frozen in time. Science supports this view. When the amygdala triggers fear, it is not acting against you, it is acting for you, interpreting change as threat. When dopamine pulls you toward distraction, it is not mocking you, it is rewarding what once ensured survival. Quick pleasures, immediate relief. When cortisol floods your body before a presentation, it is not sabotage, it is preparation, a system designed to keep you sharp in danger. The brain does not hate you, it loves you blindly, often too blindly to notice the difference between danger and opportunity. Philosophically, this recognition is transformative. If you see your brain as the enemy, you will fight it, exhaust yourself, live in conflict. But if you see it as a misguided ally, you can work with it, guide it, retrain it. You can say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. That single shift turns sabotage into dialogue. Pause here. Think of the last time you felt fear just as you were about to succeed. Instead of cursing the fear, imagine thanking it. Imagine saying, I see you, I know you want to protect me, but I choose to move forward anyway. This reframes the moment from battle to partnership. You are no longer fighting your own mind, you are leading it. Science offers hope here through neuroplasticity. Each time you respond to fear with calm action, the brain learns, circuits of stress weaken, circuits of confidence strengthen. Over time, the guardian that once overreacted learns to distinguish between true danger and growth. The ally becomes wiser. Consider the metaphor of a loyal dog. At first it barks at every noise, every shadow, pulling you away from the path. You could grow angry, scold it, or fight it. But what if instead you trained it patiently with consistency? Over time, it learns when to bark and when to relax. It is still your protector, but now a wiser one. So too with your brain. What seems like sabotage is simply an untrained guard, eager but unrefined. Philosophically, this reframes self-sabotage as self-protection in disguise. What if every retreat was your brain saying, I don't yet believe you are safe here? What if every distraction was your brain saying, I need smaller steps before I can hold this? Seen this way, sabotage is not a flaw but feedback. It tells you where safety must be built, where patience is needed, where compassion should guide. Pause again. Reflect. Where in your life do you treat your brain as an enemy? Where do you curse hesitation, blame fear, or shame yourself for distraction? What happens if you shift the lens? If you see these not as betrayals but as signals, the battle softens, the resistance loosens. You step into partnership with the very mind that once held you back. Science confirms that self-compassion strengthens resilience. When people respond to failure with kindness instead of judgment, their brains recover faster, stress decreases, and motivation increases. Treating yourself as an ally rather than an enemy is not indulgence, it is strategy. It rewires circuits, builds trust within, and creates the safety needed for growth. Philosophically, this is the quiet revolution, realizing you do not have to conquer yourself to succeed. You only have to listen, guide, and be patient with the parts of you still living in ancient fear. The brain is not against you, it is waiting for you to lead it into a new story. Still, partnership with your mind is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of a new relationship with ambition itself. For when you stop fearing success, and stop fighting your own biology, something remarkable happens. Your ambition, once tangled in fear, is reborn. It no longer burns as anxiety, but glows as steady fire. And so the final step awaits. How can fear of success be transformed into fuel for thriving? Imagine a fire in the center of a dark room. For years you feared this fire, believing it might spread, burn, consume everything. You kept your distance, circling it cautiously, sometimes throwing water on the flames whenever they grew too high. Yet now, as you step closer, you see the truth. The fire was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to light your path. This fire is your ambition, no longer a threat but a guide. Ambition reborn is not frantic, not desperate, not driven by fear of inadequacy. It is steady, warm, alive. It comes when you learn to work with your brain instead of against it, when fear becomes signal, when sabotage becomes feedback, when hesitation becomes an invitation to grow gently instead of retreat violently. In this rebirth, success no longer feels like danger, it feels like expansion. Science shows that the brain is capable of profound transformation. The same neural circuits that once triggered stress at the edge of success can, through practice, begin to associate progress with safety. Dopamine can be retrained to reward growth. The amygdala can be calmed through repeated exposure. The prefrontal cortex can strengthen its voice over impulsive reflexes. The architecture of sabotage can become the architecture of resilience. Philosophically, this means you are not condemned to remain trapped by your patterns. You are not the prisoner of fear, but the architect of your response to it. Ambition reborn is not about erasing fear, but about learning to carry it without shrinking. Fear walks beside you, but it no longer leads. You lead. Pause here. Imagine the moment when you last felt hesitation before success. Perhaps it was before sharing an idea, finishing a project, or opening your heart to someone. Now imagine responding not with retreat, but with a quiet breath, a gentle nod to your fear, and a step forward anyway. That small act is ambition reborn, choosing growth not in the absence of fear, but in its presence. Science offers a metaphor here. After trauma, the brain can rewire to avoid triggers, but with intentional practice, it can also rewire to reclaim joy. Neurons that once fired in fear can learn to fire in trust. Circuits of avoidance can become circuits of approach. The same is true for ambition. The very fire that once felt dangerous becomes the warmth that sustains you. Philosophically, this suggests that ambition, in its healthiest form, is not about conquering the world, but about unfolding the self. It is not the loud roar of constant striving, but the quiet persistence of becoming. It is the fire that says, I will keep moving, not because I must prove myself, but because growth is what life does. Pause again. Ask yourself, what would ambition feel like if it were no longer tied to fear? What if your desire for success was not about avoiding failure, but about expressing your fullness? How would you move differently if ambition burned steadily instead of erratically, if it guided instead of consumed? Consider the metaphor of a tree. A tree does not strive frantically to grow taller, it simply stretches day by day toward the light. Its ambition is not to outdo others, but to reach its own potential. So too with you, ambition reborn is the natural stretching of your being, not the frantic chase of a fearful mind. Science reminds us that habits shape identity. Each time you choose progress over retreat, compassion over shame, awareness over reflex, you strengthen circuits of growth. Over time, these choices accumulate into identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who sabotages, but as someone who grows steadily, step by step. Identity itself becomes the anchor of ambition. Philosophically, this is the deepest liberation, to see that your brain was never your enemy and your ambition was never your curse. Both were misunderstood allies, waiting to be integrated. Once understood, once guided, they become your greatest strengths. The fire warms instead of burns. The brain protects instead of resists. You become whole. And so the spiral closes, not in retreat, but in expansion. You began believing your brain betrayed you, that sabotage was weakness. You arrive seeing that sabotage was protection, fear was care, hesitation was love in disguise. Now, with awareness, compassion, and practice, you carry the key to transform them all. Pause one final time. Imagine yourself holding that fire now, not as something to extinguish, but as something to nurture. Feel its warmth on your hands, its light on your face. This is your ambition, reborn, not frantic, not fragile, but steady, alive, and deeply yours. The journey of success is no longer about escaping sabotage. It is about befriending your brain, rewriting the scripts, expanding the comfort zone, and allowing ambition to glow quietly, guiding you forward. In this light, success is not a destination but a rhythm, a daily act of courage, a steady flame carried through time. And so you arrive at the truth. The success you feared was never the enemy. It was the mirror, reflecting the vastness of what you could become. And now, step by step, you are ready to walk toward it, no longer sabotaging, no longer retreating, but carrying the quiet fire of ambition into the unfolding of your life.